Not sure you've heard, but there is a Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals tonight at Lenovo Center. Looks like it will be a lovely day. And when we get to the conference final round, the stars come out. And one of those stars is Kyle Bukauskas, who is the ringside host on SportsNet and Hockey Night in Canada, co-host of 32 Thoughts, the podcast with Elliot Friedman, that other guy. And as it turns out, I'm reading obviously from his Twitter bio, a Campbell River native, just like the head coach Rod Brind'amour. I don't think you guys knew each other growing up. I think he's significantly older than you, but I hear only great people come out of Campbell River.
Yeah. Well, at least one in Rod Brind'amour. That's for sure, Adam. Yes. No, he did not know me growing up, but I certainly knew him. I think in 2006, we may have been one of the only towns in all of Canada that were cheering for, or maybe Calgary as well, I guess, that were cheering for Carolina over Edmonton in the final that year. I'll never forget the afternoon of going down to the city center there and seeing the Stanley Cup in person when he brought it back to his hometown. And it was unreal, like, because for years, he did a charity golf tournament to raise money for cystic fibrosis, and that usually would come like Father's Day weekend. And of course, it was pushed back a bit that year because they went all the way to Game 7 and won the Stanley Cup. But it was unreal when you look back at how soon after that game was played, and then there he was in Campbell River with Stanley Cup in hand. I believe Mike Commodore came out with him too. I just logistically back in the hometown, but they turned that around quickly for him so he could attend the golf event. That was really neat.
That is awesome. So just because I'm curious now, because it is 19 years ago, what were you, like 8?
Not quite. I just 2006 would have been just shy of my 13th birthday when that happened.
Okay, so I wasn't that far off, Kyle. You have risen to great heights at a young age. I appreciate you cutting out some time because obviously we all have thoughts about Game 2. But before we get to Game 2, what ultimately were your thoughts about Game 1?
Well, I mean, it was, kind of a similar feeling to, working the series when they played Florida in the conference final 2 years ago, where you look at how they played and go, it's not to really pick apart and be critical of. But, you look at, they didn't give up a ton of chances to Florida. The difference was, like, when the Panthers got their opportunities, they capitalized. And I'm not even looking at really any of them, and you're saying, well, that was the goal, but Frederick Anderson, you can't give up that one. Like, they were elite-level finishes in most cases, or through a screen, different things like that. The challenge, I think, as this series goes on, and I think what a lot of us thought going in, is that when those opportunities pop up for Carolina, like you can't let them slide. Like
right.
You've got to be able to convert, knowing how difficult this is going to be and how well defensively Florida plays, and of course the goalie they have and their end of things. Like Bobrovsky's going to have a say in all of this too. So it's a tall task, and you could just tell, like in listening to Brind'amour there, whether it's at the podium and or the conversations we have just in the right shoulder chat after the fact. Like he's just going like it. There's not much else you can do as a coach. You think you prepared them well. You've got a system that's worked all year for this group. Just those that are paid to score and deliver in these moments, just got to find a way to do that enough.
Kyle Bukauskas is joining us here from SportsNet. You can follow him on Twitter, although you don't tweet very much, but I'll just give it out because why not? SportsNet Kyle is on Twitter. I think it's been a minute. Going back to like what Rod said, what Rod said to you, what Rod said to me, because I've already done my pregame chat with him, because they've gone back and gone through the game, and he goes, we allowed them almost nothing. Until the third period, maybe, I don't think Florida generated a scoring chance, a good one on their own, apart from that one in the early part of the second period that made it 3-1, the 3-on-2. There were probably some missed assignments in there. The 3-on-2 that ultimately was finished by A.J. Greer. You can understand what Rod's thinking about. Like, we have really given them nothing, or they have created nothing, and yet we're still trailing.
Right, and so I think it goes back to, I know he's talked about it, and I think, even to an extent, like Paul Maurice is a big believer in this too, like where, if you keep doing the right things enough, like you stack those opportunities up enough and examples enough, like eventually it's going to go your way. I mean, it didn't for Carolina in game one, but I don't think it's I know the old definition of insanity, but I don't think it would apply here to you think for the Hurricanes, if they continue to operate the way that they have, it's gotten them to this point. You've got to trust at some point, there's going to be enough there that has them come through on the right side of things. I mean, the other part of it too, Adam, as like the penalty kill has been dynamite through the first two rounds of the playoffs, and then you give up two in game one. Like that makes it, a lot more difficult. I just, in watching, the Florida Panthers throughout not only this year, but the last number of years, spot them a lead at your own peril.
Yeah.
So that's going to be, I know it's always the feeling of, you want to have a good start, you want to score first. It just seems it's so critical against this team to not give them as a collective, or particularly Sergei Bobrovsky, a lead to work with, because they are as comfortable as any when it comes to being in those situations. Like it's unbelievable. So under Paul Maurice, so you think of the last 3 years in the playoffs, they have not lost a game when they have a lead after the first period or after the second period. That's incredibly hard to do, and they just continue to deliver when they have a lead to play with.
Yeah, just ask Edmonton from last night. That was a stunning and quick turnaround to that game early in the third period, with the Stars scoring 3 times on the power play in like six or so minutes. Kyle Bukauskas from SportsNet is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. And then you add to what Florida is. And, the funny thing is that under the previous coach, Andrew Burnett, I think they won the President's Trophy, had 122 points, got bounced out in the second round of the playoffs by Tampa. And then Paul Maurice shows up. They get to the Stanley Cup Finals. They win a Stanley Cup. And, they're the favorites, the odds-on favorites right now to get back to the Stanley Cup Finals again. And he has brought his brand of defensive-oriented grittiness to a high-octane group. And now they just added Brad Marchand, who's taken their third line to maybe their best line.
Yeah, I really think, like you touched on, that 2022 year winning the President's Trophy. I think in hindsight, the best thing that happened to the Florida Panthers, when you look at this edition, this era of their franchise, the best thing that happened to them was being swept by Tampa in the second round that year. I covered that series. Tampa got through an absolute gauntlet of a first round against Toronto that year. It went 7 games. Everything was tight. They were a wounded animal coming into Florida. Braden Point wasn't healthy, and they just willed their way to a 4-game sweep over the Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
Like it was unbelievable to watch. And I think Bill Zito saw that, and you can't tell me that there wasn't a part of them that, from seeing those 4 games, that triggered the decision that summer, not only go out and hire Paul Maurice, but also make the trade for Matthew Tkachuk. And the franchise has never been the same since then when you look at how they play. I think it was a perfect storm in a lot of cases where like an organization that was prepared to go in the direction they're at now, and the opportunity to lure a coach who, remember, he left Winnipeg and he was prepared to ride off into the sunset and kind of call it a career as a head coach from that point, but convinced him that there was reason to continue to hone his craft as behind the bench in Florida. And you look at where they at where they are now. Like, not many teams have the opportunity to, be as good as they are already, and then, as you say, bring in not only Brad Marchand but Seth Jones too.
Yeah.
I think it is a great reminder across the league where it's tough to make a decision, especially some of the bolder ones come trade deadline. But when you've got a management group, a scouting group that you trust, that can highlight players that you believe will help you, give you a chance, and you do the homework necessary. Like you're seeing the payoff here now for Florida, and like all of that, it's going to take an incredible effort from Carolina to knock them off. But they're a good team too. Like they've earned their way here to this point, and you just need to win one here, and it would be great for their end to do it tonight, because then at least you push off the narrative of another game in the conference final that they lost, another one against Florida where they don't score enough. Put that to bed, and it kind of allows you to wipe the slate clean a little bit.
Yeah, I would just say it's a little bit like if Rory McIlroy wins the Masters, but then Rory didn't play well at the PGA. So maybe it's I need a different analogy. Plus, if Carolina wins tonight, we know that you're coming back to town next Wednesday. Kyle Bukauskas, SportsNet, 32 Thoughts, the podcast, at SportsNet Kyle, if you just want to look at his Twitter timeline. I'll see you at the rink. I appreciate your time, sir. It was good to meet.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Adam. Appreciate having me on.
You got it. Take care. Kyle Bukauskas from SportsNet in Canada.